Hey guys, welcome back to the Big Red Express. I am joined by CrossFit Games play-by-play commentator Brandon Domingue. Brandon, first off, good to see you again, and how's it going?
Everything's great. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. Just, like I was just telling you, just staying busy and it, it was an exciting week of the games. I'm sure it was just as exciting for you. Talk to us a little bit about kind of your perspective, and we'll kind of just dive right into it. You've done the games for the past few years. You've done other competitions. You've done regionals. What was this year's games like compared to the rest?
Well, first, thank you for having me on. This year, my third year, kind of like that first year's kind of a blur. It's always
Right.
kind of tough to comprehend what you're going through. But this year was definitely the craziest test. That really, just as a fan, as a commentator, I've seen the athletes have to go through, and it was really cool seeing that because it is the 10th year. Um, I'm very happy that they put the athletes through what they did, and just we really pushed the limits this year. And it was great to see the athletes not just go through it, but thrive in it.
When you look at your perspective, you see probably more heats than any of the spectators, and you know the people at home watch who they want to watch, or they watch the individuals and things like that. As a play-by-play guy, you almost have to. You watch the teens, you watch the masters, you watch the women teams and the men. When you look at that, and especially over the past couple of years where they've integrated the teens division, for you as a person who does CrossFit and that sees that, how does it look for the future of the sport? How does that look, and how's it, when you look at those heats and those people that are competing, how cool is it for you to be like, you know what, I'm a part of history?
It's really cool. Last year, got to call the first ever team competition on both sides, boys and girls, and that was really cool. You could start to see how the landscape was starting to change, and we were kind of talking about it off air at the games that you might not see these athletes make that turn to regionals or the games right away. But you're getting an idea of what it's going to look like when those athletes that are 16, 17 now turn 21 years old, 20
Right.
years old, where you get like Samuel Quant, Maddie Myers, like the athletes in those ages now. But the future looks so bright on the teen side. The masters side is always just awesome to watch. You watch guys like Sean Ramirez and Ron Ortiz
Right.
and Phil Grundler, like they get a lot of the hype, and Cheryl Brost on the women's side, Amanda Allen, but you see some amazing stuff all the way from the 40-year-olds to the 60-year-olds.
Right.
And that's always the cool stuff. And getting to be a part of that for the past 3 years has just been really just awesome to be trying to help them be showcased in the way that they should be.
We as a spectator don't get that unique perspective. We don't see the crowd except when, maybe the camera pans on the crowd. As a play-by-play guy, someone who has got a front row seat in the tennis stadium, a front row seat in the StubHub Center, how cool is it for you as a commentator to feel the atmosphere, feel the energy, and kind of have to feed that off of the athletes and the crowd to give it to the audience?
Sorry, you kind of cut out there at the end of that one, but
Yeah, what? Yeah, how cool is it to kind of feed off the crowd and the athletes that energy in those big, those loud atmospheres as the tennis stadium and the soccer stadium, and kind of relay that to the audience?
it's unreal. We always talk about in the tennis stadium. It's this electric atmosphere that you don't really get anywhere else. Um, Lucky for me, coming into this, I've had a little bit of experience with other sports,
Right.
working on football broadcasts and basketball broadcasts. Nighttime at the tennis stadium, it really is unlike anything I've been a part of.
Right.
It's just incredibly loud, incredibly encouraging, and you can see the athletes just completely change. Like they go from surviving during the day in the soccer
Yeah.
stadium, the tennis stadium, it is just a different gear. And just seeing the crowd react to the athletes, it's really cool. You don't really get to see that on television as much as you could if you were there. And really, from our vantage point, especially in the tennis stadium, where we're right above everybody in the crowd,
Right.
we're in a booth that's just off to the side. You get the moments like Josh Bridges standing up that clean to end the squat clean pyramid, having a triple jump or whatever you want to call that at the end. Just the crowd reaction to that, it's just unreal, and you really get goosebumps thinking about some of those moments. Loudest probably ever and the coolest ever was the last clean for Spieler on the squat clean ladder,
Right.
the speed clean ladder a couple of years ago. There's always those moments that stick with you, and that was really cool to have, especially in the first year I got to do it.
When you look back and you said you've done other sports, how do the CrossFit Games compare to a football game or a basketball game in terms of, it's not as mainstream as those sports, but it's getting there, but the passion, I feel, is almost stronger or just as strong as a football or a basketball game?
It's passionate from the fans, the atmosphere. It's something that we kind of talk about it, and I think we talked about it ad nauseum a few years ago.
Yeah.
But CrossFit's really the one sport where everybody in the crowd knows exactly what the athletes are going through, for the most part. Like, I think last year, not many knew what the pegboard felt like.
Exactly, right.
Probably a few more now. But it's one of those ones that you know what the athlete is going through. And you know that sometimes you need that support. You know that pain, it sucks, to put it in the easiest way possible. And so the athletes always get that support. The crowd knows that they need it at times, and it's just that relatable feel. Obviously, it's a lot longer event than a football game,
right?
And so you get that layoff, and that's cool, where the crowd can kind of go to the vendor village, go walk around, meet other people from around the world. Like this year, I would say it was probably 30%, 40% were international fans,
right?
But it's just a very cool atmosphere that you really don't get from football games or basketball games.
When you look at just the way the sport has progressed, not only in the past 10 years since it started, but just in the past 3 years since you've been involved, how cool is it, for you personally to see your own CrossFit journey, move through the trenches, and also the CrossFit Games move through the trenches as well, getting harder, getting tougher, and Dave Castro throwing things at these athletes that we never even could have imagined 3 years ago, let alone 10.
I mean, we were talking about it on air on the Masters side. Their final event with the 27 chest to bar pull-ups, the 2 rounds of axle bar DT.
Right.
We're saying that really would be a feasible individual games event.
Right.
And we're getting 55, 60-year-olds to do that event.
Yeah.
And they're crushing it. And it shows you how strong the CrossFit community is and the athletes are, because they're willing to adapt to those kind of challenges. The past 3 years, we've seen some events that, heck, even a year ago with Murph, you saw how challenging that was for the athletes, in large part because you don't know how to pace that when you're in a competition setting. That's not something you really practice. This year, they have the same thing, a little bit different, partitioning, a little bit early in the day, of course, but just the way that they attacked it was so much different. It was something that they learned. I know personally, every year I see some of these new things, I kind of cringe a little bit, because doing local competitions, I'm like, oh, now there's an idea for everybody else.
Right.
But just in the past 3 years, the crowd has really been the same. Like, the atmosphere has been the same for the past 3 years, and that's where you want to see it, because it's off the charts every year. But the challenges are just that much more incredible, and just seeing the athletes take on those challenges and excel, it's really inspiring.
When you look at your own CrossFit journey, and you said that CrossFit may be one of the only professional sports that fans can kind of come and relate to the athletes, because sometimes the fans have done that exact same workout, whether it's in training, whether it's in another competition. Yeah, Dave Castro likes to throw a curveball in every once in a while, but everyone has done Murph. If you have been in CrossFit for over the last year, everyone does Murph at least once a year on Memorial Day. It's just kind of the standard thing across the world to do. So you almost get that extra passion from the fans. It's like, these guys are struggling and they're the fittest in the world. How has your CrossFit journey impacted the way that you call the action when you're doing the games or regionals?
I mean, I've been in last place in a competition, so
Right.
it's not that the person's not fit. I mean, if you're just to get to the games being dead last, you're still a cyborg. Like,
Right.
it doesn't make sense to be that fit.
Yeah.
But it just shows you how amazing the top level is. Like, there's always the separate levels in any competition, and you can always see the elite. Matt Fraser clearly was the elite on the men's side this year. Katrin, Tia, Sarah, Sam, they were the elite on the women's side this year. They separated themselves. But just because you're in last place doesn't mean you're not a fit person. It doesn't mean you're not in the top 40 in the world, which is incredible. So knowing that from my own competitive experience, that granted I'm 2,000 spots away from even making regionals, but from my own competitive experience, like, last place, it hurts, and it doesn't mean that you're not putting in the effort. You can't call it like, oh, well, this person just doesn't want it today, or this person.
Right.
No, it's just you're getting beat, and that happens. Sometimes it's learning experience. Like this year, some of the names you saw on the bottom of the standings, they're athletes making their first appearance, and that's straight up learning. Madeline Sturt, 19 years old. She'll be back. She's got a long time ahead of her. So it just makes it where you can kind of relate to that person that's near the back. Personally, in CrossFit, I've never stepped on a podium. But so I don't know how much the winning side of that is, but that one's a little bit easier to call, obviously.
When you look at kind of just the way the sport's progressed, as you have progressed, and you see these athletes coming back for 2 and 3 games appearances, that first game is you probably saw some of these guys as you were walking around, and you were kind of probably a little starstruck at first when you first saw them. How has that been? You were calling some of the fittest men in history: Ben Smith, Rich Froning, Matt Fraser, Katrin Davis, Andy Thornton. Like, the list goes on and on of the athletes that have been there numerous times. How cool is it for you as a commentator who, is a commentator, but it's also a fan as well?
Yeah, and I've done CrossFit for 6.5 years. So first 3.5, I was a total fan.
Right.
And I'm still a fan. Like, it's hard to hide it sometimes, but that first year I was a complete fan. I said it was a blur, and it's because that was a shock to me. Like, I last did media in 2008 and kind of stumbled in through a Facebook post on getting a spot on a broadcast, which I thought it was for media volunteers, and it winds up being, hey, we're going to bring you to here's tape of the games from 2013, do commentary over it, and then we'll bring you to California and see if you're going to work, and then here's one regional, now you're going to have 3, now you're going to go to the games. Like, it was a whirlwind. And it was all the people that I've watched on TV and looked up to: Chris Spieler, Josh Bridges. Like, those are the ones that I relate to the most because they're the smaller guys.
Right.
I'm only 5'6", 165. Like, I'm not a big guy.
Right.
But that year was interesting. I was a little shy. I'm a shy person to begin with, but to meet a lot of the people was kind of like, whoa, I don't know about that.
Right.
Last year I had a lot of things going on away from media, stuff with the gym I was a part of. I had a breakup right before the games. Life happens. And it was kind of a similar thing. But this year was definitely cool because I came in just with a clear mind and ready to just enjoy what was happening, and got to meet so many more of the athletes and talk to so many more. That has been the coolest part of the experience this year, was just being more myself and letting myself kind of get to know more people.
Right.
That's the tough thing, where a lot of people think if you're in the media, and for the most part it can happen, but, oh, you're in the media, you're going to meet everybody. I'm kind of tucked away in Atlanta. I'm not part of the California guys. I'm not on the play-by-play stuff. So I don't meet as many as they do. And also, you're kind of in a booth. You're not, on the floor meeting people. Like, when you're doing the MC stuff, you're obviously right there with the athletes.
Right.
We're kind of away from everybody. But to meet the athletes and to get to know them, and now at this point, after a few years, call a good amount of them friends. and talk to them every now and then. It's definitely a cool experience. That's obviously bettered myself in CrossFit, and just getting to experience that and put myself out there a little bit more has bettered me as a person.
You've done other events other than the CrossFit Games. You've done regionals and some open workouts, and also you've done Wadapalooza. How cool is it when you do go to these other events and people, hey, you're the guy from ESPN. We've seen you. We've heard you on ESPN. Does that ever get old when some of your friends from back home are like, hey, we heard you on ESPN. That was awesome.
The friends part, that's definitely the cool thing, because like I'll start getting pictures of like on text messages where it's
Right.
like, hey, we're having a watch party and you're on, and we're eating chicken wings and listening to you in California. The fan part doesn't happen that often, so it's still very shocking when it does.
Right.
It'll happen at regionals a little bit, but normally at the games, I think it happened a handful of times, and that was pretty cool. But yeah, at stuff like Wadapalooza and all that, it's definitely that festival feel.
Right.
And so you get the people that are really more into it, as opposed to, hey, I want to go and just see this competition. Hey, I want to go,
Right.
like more people like that. But yeah, doing all those events and meeting people in the community, that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's kind of hard to top when your friends start getting with you on all that.
When you look back at your CrossFit, how did you start into CrossFit? How did you kind of get into the CrossFit craze? I've been doing it now for, I think it was 4 years, just a couple months ago. It's crazy to see that it was that long. But how did you get into CrossFit? And you said that, you saw a post on Facebook, wanting to do commentary for, I think it was Cinco One. I believe I saw that.
Yeah, Cinco
that post as well a few years back. And so, how did your CrossFit journey start for people that may want to know?
So I was definitely the fat kid growing up. When I graduated high school, I was 5'6". I was probably about 240 pounds. Definitely not in shape. I played baseball, but I wasn't the most active person. My father passed away when I was 17, and he was pushing 300 pounds and had a few health problems. And after that, it took me a while to really kind of grasp what was going on. And 2008, I actually wound up hospitalized because depression and anxiety was kind of spiraling out of control. After I got out of the hospital, I started working out a little bit more, kind of trying to take care of myself, not drinking 3 sodas a day, things like that. I was doing that and maybe fast food like 6-7 times a week.
Wow.
Like, it was but I started working out a little bit. I moved out to Georgia in 2009, and 2010, I saw a group of students at my college kind of just working out in this yard in front of the gym, and it was like a bunch of squats and push-ups and crawling around in a dirt patch, and I was
Right.
like, that looks like a fun group. I fancy myself to be fit. I've run one 5K, so I might as well try it. And kind of jumped in on it the second day they did it, and got hooked. And I went from 210 at that time, dropped about 30, 40 pounds within 8 months.
Wow.
Saw a complete change, and I've done it ever since. I'll dabble in weightlifting meets and stuff like that too, but for the most part, it's CrossFit training across the board now. Just haven't looked back for 6.5 years now.
Awesome. Brandon, we're about to wrap things up. Where can people find you if they got questions, if they want to maybe hire you for a gig or something like that? How can people get in touch with you?
Easiest way is probably going to be their LinkedIn. Just look up my name, Domingue. It'll be somewhere on the page, I'm guessing. It's the last possible way you would ever think of spelling it. I'm on Instagram. I'm not much of a Twitter guy. On Instagram, it's bdomain86. I always do pretty good about responding on there. And yeah, that's probably going to be the 2 easiest ways to get in touch with me. Or just follow me. Always fun getting Instagram followers. Yeah. But yeah, it's always cool to reach me there.
One last question.
Yeah.
You've been to the games 3 years now. You've done play-by-play. What is your favorite moment from the games from the past 3 years?
When I first started CrossFit and knew that the games was a thing, Chris Spieler was always my guy.
Right. He was the
Yeah,
legend.
yeah, he's the icon
Yeah.
of the sport, really. Like I always joke, I'm a wrestling guy, and you always have Rock was the people's champion.
Right.
To me, Chris Spieler is the people's champion.
100%. I agree.
And being able to not just see but call his final event at the games, that was absolutely huge. That's something I'm always going to. I even saw him afterwards, and I was just like, I'm a fan first, and that was amazing to call.
Right.
And thanked him for not even like it's not like it was his choice, but thanking him for getting that year and just that coincidence, basically getting to call it, and just for his career. Like that to me is by far the coolest moment I've gotten to experience.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, thanks so much for chatting with us. We will catch you down the road. Maybe we can sit down again down in Florida at Wadapalooza.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Yeah, that was great.